So with negotiating, how many of you negotiate? Anything? When do you not? Again, John, great answer. When do we not? You know, we learned, and I'm going to flip through some of these slides because, again, sometimes you teach just this one class. So you've already heard about me and you know who I am and you know to make sure your phones are on vibrate and all the rest. So we negotiate every day, every one of us. And we learned how to negotiate when we were in kindergarten. Remember the book, I Learned Everything I Needed to Know in Kindergarten? It really is true. So how did you learn to negotiate in kindergarten? Logan, what did you learn?
If you wanted something and you had something that somebody else wanted, you could make an offer.
There you go. Little trade, little barter system. You want the bigger Tonka, give him two of the little smaller ones, right? Yeah. I mean, we all learned how to do those kinds of things and those skills. How about as teenagers with your parents? Did you learn how to negotiate?
Didn't get to very much.
Yeah. I learned really quickly, you don't go to dad first. Yeah. You go to mom first. Because she'll usually say, yeah, I think that's okay. Or she'll say, I'll talk to dad about it. But if you go to dad, there's no talking to mom. It's just like, no, you're not going to do it. I love my parents. They were a great influence in my life. But I learned very quickly that I was the baby of the family. Therefore, I was my mom's favorite. Therefore, I could just have a little bit more leeway. My older siblings say that I was spoiled. And I said, no, I watched you do stupid things and I just chose not to do them because I saw what happened. And I avoided all that. Now, there's a lot of truth to that. And they actually recognized it. They said, we hadn't thought of it that way. But they were old enough that, yeah, you learn those things. So in negotiation is a very interesting topic. I personally love it. There's a lot of classes out there about negotiation. There's a lot of seminars and certifications that you can take on negotiation. Harvard Business School has a whole class and classes and courses on negotiation. And they're considered one of the go-to in our country for negotiation skills. And we've all had good negotiations and bad ones, right? Have you ever wanted to do a do-over? Man, sometimes those hurt. So I had a do-over, or I wished I could have done a do-over. I was doing a project, and we had designed it, and we had engineers and architects, and everyone was involved. It was a great project, and we were ready. We put the infrastructure in, and we were going to do 7 office buildings. And we were excited. We had a couple potential tenants, and we had some buyers. We were going to keep a couple for ourselves as an investment, and my partner and I were really excited about that. And so we went to sign the loan document on the first 2 buildings. My wife said to me, we were kind of in a hurry because we were going to go on vacation, and she said, you know, honey, I don't know why, but I got a bad feeling. I've learned to listen to my wife because she's pretty smart, and she's watched me from afar, and she's probably my best advisor and counselor, to be honest. Give her full credit. We've been married 45 years. She's good. And she knows me well. And she said to me, I really don't have a good feeling. My partner was anxious. The bank was anxious. I was kind of caught between. We were trying to get out the door. I said, I have to do it. It's too far into the process. I don't, tell me why. Give me something. And she said, I just don't have a good feeling. So I went ahead and we signed the documents. One of the potential building owners was indicted a week later and was going to go to jail. And so that contract was gone. And make a long story short, the market turned about 6 months later. And we didn't start construction because we had a gut feeling that maybe we should listen to our wives. So we didn't. So we paid some interest and it cost us some money. But at least we didn't have buildings sitting there vacant. And then the city came to us and they said, what we really want you to do is do this and do some residential here. And we thought, okay. So we did some research. We came back and said, yeah, we could do that. So we went in and with our designers, our engineers, we redesigned the infrastructure, and then we went in and modified the infrastructure to now, instead of these buildings, to be residential. and had to make the roads work and the site pads work. And we got it done, and then we went about to do that. We lost a lot of money, a lot of money. The reality is that if I had a do-over with negotiation, I would say to the banker, love you dearly, you're a good friend, you've taken good care of us, but we can't sign that loan today. Give us a week. And everything would have been very crystal clear. I didn't know that that guy was a bum. His brother, who was his partner, didn't know he was a bum. Guy went to jail. He's the one with the money. A week. All I would have needed was 7 days. I wished I had that as a do-over. But negotiating can be interesting. There's several types. I'm going to go through these fairly quickly. So there's different terms, different organizations call it differently, so just take it for what it's worth, but this is what I've come up with. So there's hard negotiations, there's soft negotiations, and there's a win-win. Now, I think win-win is pretty self-explanatory. The other two, some negotiations, when you say they're soft, they really don't cover the bases. They really don't get the results that one or both parties need. Hard negotiations, have you ever had a really tough negotiation where the person was just a pain in the you-know-what? That's hard. You've experienced that. That's a hard negotiation. There are people who believe that that's the only way to negotiate. I'm here to tell you they're full of you-know-what. The bottom line is, if it's not a win-win, you're not going to continue to do work with that party. If you're always getting taken to the cleaner, why do you want to negotiate with them? It's got to be a two-way street. And yet we allow ourselves to get into situations where we don't negotiate like we should. So we're going to talk about that and share some ideas and concepts. Because there's what they call moves. People do, they'll challenge your confidence. They'll say, Russ, you don't know what the heck you're talking about. You got to do this deal. This is why we have to do this. And they make you feel inferior. That's one of the things that's used really heavily in these bad negotiations. They'll make demeaning comments, really off the wall. I mean, I've heard some really strange stuff that I don't even care to repeat. But sometimes that will be the case in a really bad negotiation. They'll be critical of your style. Well, Mark, you may be a really smart builder, but you're an idiot as a business. You don't know a clue about business. You know, I'm a businessman. I got an MBA at Harvard. Stupid comments. So what if you got an MBA at Harvard? You're a terrible negotiator. Sometimes they'll feign sympathy. Like, well, we know material's more money now, but we just can't raise our price. You're just going to have to cut your prices because we can't do anything about that. I mean, it's just, yeah, like, right, you really care? If I'm going to take less money, you're not taking less money. They'll use flattery. There's just a lot of different ways people will try to get at your psyche when they're negotiating. And there are some people that are really good at it. I worked for a guy who prided himself at being a really shrewd, awesome negotiator. And he said to me one day, he said, Mark, you will never be successful unless you become a butt when it comes to negotiating. You have got to be meaner. And I thought about my upbringing, and I thought about my mentors, and I thought, I disagree with him. I don't think you have to be that way to be a good negotiator. In fact, I think just the opposite is true. You've won a lot of battles, and it's evident you're very successful. I mean, I'm thinking to myself this. You've got a lot of money in the bank, a lot of assets, big, fancy house. But I don't think you're happy. And I don't think you have everything. And so I determined that I was not going to fall into that trap. I was his vice president. And I just decided I just wasn't going down that road. To make the story short, we got into a negotiation where it was time to pay my bonus. And we'd had a really good year. And I had busted my fanny. I had really done a great job. I had done so much more than what he expected. And so my bonus was really big. And so he sat me down in his office. He was, I mean, I'm not a real big guy, but I'm, big enough. He was probably about 5'8". Nothing against 5'8". My son's 5'8". He got his mom's genes. But he had an elevated platform where his desk was. And his chairs that you sat in had really soft cushions so that I would be looking at you like this, Logan. He would have the window turned so the light was right in my eyes. He had 2 heat systems in his office, so he was very comfortable. And if it was a hot summer day, he had air and I had not so much air. I mean, this guy did all the tactics. He was very good at it. Fortunately, I knew that, and because we'd had some experiences with some very distasteful outcomes. And so I'm sitting in that chair looking up at him, and he's giving me all the reasons why I'm a piece of work, and things have cost the company more, and he just can't really afford to pay me that bonus that's in writing that we've agreed to. And so we need to renegotiate. So I countered with my best negotiation skills, and I got it to where we would draw a line in the sand today, and we're going to conclude this negotiation of that previous contract. And when that was completed and paid out, now listen to what I said. When that negotiation was completed and paid out, we would then negotiate going forward what the new deal would look like. So we started negotiating that. And he made me an offer. And it was ridiculous. And so we went back and forth, back and forth. We concluded our day at an impasse. And we agreed that we would come back and complete it the next day. So I went home, sat down with my advisor, and I said, okay, this is what the situation is. I am ticked. And I said, he's not going to give me anything going forward. I mean, it's going to be, work your gut out, make the company successful, but you're not going to share in anything. I said, so I want to resign. I don't have a new job, but I want to resign. And she said, okay. So we crafted my resignation letter. And when we got that done, and nice and typed up, then we started talking about the negotiation that I was going to go to the next morning. And we looked at the dollar amount we were supposed to get, and we looked at what he offered. And my wife gave me the best advice possible. She said, honey, negotiate to this point right here. And when you get there, take the money. I said, he should pay it all. She said, you're not going to get it all. Use your skills, get it to here. If it's a little more, fine, but get it to there. Don't stop till you're there. So that's what I did the next day. And it was a brutal, painful experience in my memory. And we got to that point and a little bit beyond. And trying not to be too excited, I heard the words of my advisor saying, take the money and run. And so I said, you know what? We could beat this up a lot. You're here. I'm here. I could argue the fact that that's the contract. But you know what? You've agreed that this would be an okay amount. I can agree to that. Let's put it in writing. Cut me a check. And then let's schedule when we're going to come back and redo this other stuff. He said, done. So he walks out to the accounting department and says, write a check for Mark for that amount. And so we sign a piece of paper that we agreed that that's payment in full for my services for that year as a bonus. And it was getting close to lunch. And I said, let's take a lunch break. He said, you know what? I've got some stuff to do this afternoon. Can we meet tomorrow and do the rest of that negotiation? I said, sure, no problem. So he handed me the check. I walked out to my car. I got in my car. I went to his bank. I cashed the check for cash. They didn't want to do that much cash. They gave me a cashier's check. I went to my bank and I put it in my bank account. Called my wife and said, whew. She was thrilled. As an advisor, she was just like, she was doing a happy dance. And I felt pretty good. So I went about my job and doing my stuff. And the next morning I came in early and I set in an envelope my resignation letter on his desk. And then I set it on the other two VPs' desks because I worked with them every day and they were good people and I wanted them to know that I was resigning. And I'd done it like way, way early in the morning, then went out on the projects. And I got a phone call a little after 7. And one of the senior VPs called me and said, Mark, you can't quit. I said, well, I am. He said, but you can't. No one's ever quit. He fires people, but no one ever quits. I said, you know what? Life is too short. I don't mind working really hard, but I am not going to get screwed. And I said, he stepped over the line. I'm not going to stay here. So he begged me, let's go to lunch. He said, I took it off his desk because I figured you put one on his. So he actually had taken my resignation letter off the president's desk. I said, go put it back on his desk. So he did, and I got a phone call a few hours later, and oh, did I hear some great language. You know, I thought I'd heard it all in the industry, and I got a butt chewing. And he demanded that I drop what I was doing and come back to his office. I thought, okay, you're the boss. So I went back to the office, sat back in the chair. And he says to me, you knew that you were going to quit when you got that money out of me. I said, no. You told me I had to be a real butt to be a negotiator and be successful. I said, I made a decision the night before that if I could get that much money out of you, I would take it and I would quit. That was the decision I made. He said, well, no, I canceled the check. And I said, I already cashed it, and the money's in my bank. Oh, was he mad at me. We left on bad terms. He paid me for 2 weeks, but I was out the door that day. I was so happy. Negotiations can be very painful. They can be very emotional. My advice is have an advisor. Consider every negotiation important. When you're negotiating with your material supplier, what does it take for them to be successful? What does it take for you to be successful? I went to one of my material suppliers and I said, you know what? I need to have lower material costs. It's killing me. He said, Mark, we're giving you already the same price we're giving, the big boys. I said, you're not giving them, they're building 100 homes a year, I'm building 5 or 6. You're not giving me the same price. And so he pulled out the paper and said, here you are. I said, well, how come I'm getting that price? He says, because you pay on time. We always get your money every month. I said, well, what else can we do? He said, well, if you pay 5 days sooner, I can give you 3% off. I said, really? I do all my construction with construction loans. My bank doesn't care if I call 5 days early. I said, really? 5 days early, I get 3% off all my lumber, all my trim, all my doors. He said, yeah. I said, done. Where do I sign? He says, you don't. You just pay me 5 days early. I started doing 3 draws instead of 2 draws a month. And the one draw was just for my material supplier. And I got an extra 3%. That was a really simple negotiation. I asked a question. He wanted, and when we ask for help, most of the time people want to help. I was just looking, I didn't want to change suppliers. I didn't threaten him. I just said, I need to lower my costs. What can you do to help me? He showed me proof that I was getting good pricing, and then he offered how I could get even better. And then we negotiated the fact that if I was using material and it wasn't dirty and hadn't been nailed, I could return it, and he wouldn't charge me a restocking fee, nor would he charge me to come get it. My job was to keep it clean. So I changed how I was organizing my lumber on my job sites. And there wasn't a single job that I didn't make a phone call that they didn't come back and pick up material that I got a credit for. You can do those kinds of things when you take care of the other side. It's a two-way street. Now, there's what's been your experience? Have you had some gut-wrenching, nasty do-overs that you'd like to do? Share.
Well, I had a builder that was like your boss. And yeah, he was shrewd, and yeah, he had a lot of money, but he was the same exact guy as your boss. I found that as I was working on this development, that every sub was treated like that. And at the end of the day, he was losing subs right and left. So he was used to just turning and burning.
Yep.
That's how he did his business. That's
Yep.
how he did business. So,
Yep.
Thank goodness you don't deal with many people like that. Otherwise, it would be really rough. But
Yeah, fortunately, there's a few out there, and if you're smart, you can get away from them. But there's no reason for it. There's no reason for it. I found in my career someone asked me this question. They said, why have you been successful? And I said, it's because I surround myself with people that A, are smarter than me, people I can trust, people who take care of me, and I take care of them. You know, if they're a trade and they do the work, I pay them. And I set up my business such that they get paid. One of the things you can do today if you're struggling to get really good subs and getting them on time is pay them more frequently. You know, we've heard that term for years, but how many of you are paying your subs twice a month?
Be honest.
Yeah, be honest. I went from, and this was before the crash. This was before we lost 53% of the skilled workers. I was paying twice a month. My trades and suppliers got paid twice a month. I was getting discounts, but hey, that's the name of the game. At the end of the day, I was saving enough money that it made up the difference on what interest I was paying because one, my schedule was shorter. I wasn't paying interest for longer periods of time on my projects. My customers were happier. Yes, did I have to spend a little more time doing the paperwork? A little bit, because I can actually, you know, twice a month, there's some things you got to do twice, whereas once a month you're just doing it once, but there's more of it. So yeah, I spent a little bit more time in the office, but not a substantial amount, and the benefits way outweighed that time that I was paying. So it was worth it to me. And so you have to look at your experience. What works? What doesn't work? Let me go through some quick ones. So, you know, we talked about the heat. He actually had temperature setting. That's normal. Another one is they try to manipulate you when you're in a negotiation. That happens a lot. You'll have one where they'll try to change the facts. Well, the facts don't change just because you want to change them. We live in a world today where there's a lot of fact changing because of social media. The reality is saying it ain't so doesn't mean it is. It's just the way it is. They'll challenge your authority. I've had that happen in a lot of negotiations. Well, you're just going to say yes, and then your boss will come back and change it later. And I would say, I'm the VP. I make the final decision here. End of story. They'll try to lowball you. That's one that just drives me crazy, when someone's always trying to lowball you. I had a situation that, well, we'll talk about next class, but it goes to this. I'll try to remember to tell you that it goes with this. The bottom line is one of my keys to success, and what I see as my builder clients' key to success, is take really good care of your trades. Involve them in the process. Engage them. They're your experts. Use them as experts. And some really cool things happen. I'll share that story next hour. Last minute concessions. You know, you're almost done, and then all of a sudden they want to throw something else in. And it's like, oh, really? I mean, come on, why didn't we talk about that last week? That's a tactic that people, when they take some of these negotiation classes and certifications, that they teach you to use. I've taken those classes. I learned that it doesn't work for me. It works better for me if I'm just up front and say, Mike, what do we need to do to make this work? What do you need? And you tell me, and then I tell you. And then we look at the things that don't align, and then we work those through. And 9 times out of 10, we figure it out. You know, I love it when they act like they're so shocked. Why would you even say that? But there's just all these tactics that people will use, and some of them use a lot of them, some of them use 1 or 2 of them. At the end of the day, if you're in a situation where you feel that, if you feel any kind of a threat, you're just working with the wrong people. And you're better off just saying, not my cup of tea. If it is your cup of tea, so be it. I'm not here to judge you, but I've been doing this for decades, and I can tell you from my experience, I sleep really good at night.
One quick thing, if
Please.
you see those signs, it's usually a red flag. They won't pay you on time. They'll try to, not pay you what you agreed on.
Screw you out of the bonus?
Yeah.
Yeah. You're right, Russell. In my experience, that's a red flag. It's a warning. And at some point in time, there will be fallout. There was a lot of fallout when the downturn hit. A lot of trades got burned by builders, big time, because they got burned. And so they kind of passed along the love. And unfortunately, it hurts. I know 2 builders that sold everything they owned and paid every trade that they owed money to when the downturn hit and crashed. And the only people they owed money to was the bank. When all was said and done, they took care of the trades. They took care of the vendors. It was only the banks that they owed money to. One of them is still in business. He was able to renegotiate with the bank. The other guy, the bank basically flipped him off and he got screwed. He's no longer in the business. But I admire those two builders because they saw to it that everyone they had contracted with to do work got paid for the work they did. They even paid guys who didn't finish jobs but had bought material and paid for the material. They made sure that no one was owing money because of them. And that takes a big person to do that. We've talked about some of these things. I don't want to spend a lot of time on, because we've talked about the tactics. There's thousands of tactics that they use. And we've all met a person or two that will use them. But be aware of them. Recognize that sometimes you think like they're using, humor. The reality is they're trying to screw you. That's what they're trying to do. And the red flag, as Russell said, if you sense a red flag, when you feel something, we're all pretty smart. When you sense something, go with your feeling. 9 times out of 10, you'll be right. And that one time you're wrong, well, I'd rather take that 10% and be wrong because of that. When I have followed my gut feeling, when I have followed my advisor's advice, I have not strayed too far. I've been pretty successful. When I haven't followed my intuition, my feeling, when I haven't listened to my advisor, and we all need an advisor or two, and when you don't do that, trust me, there's going to be a problem. I have a mentor that we've been good friends. We've worked on projects for years in various capacities, and he's now retired. And it's very common for me to pick up the phone and call him. Now, I used to hesitate to call because you can't call and talk for 20 minutes with this guy. It's a couple hours. So I have to pick when I'm going to call him. But he's always there, and he always gives me the advice I need to hear to help me make a better decision in a situation. How to handle a specific client, how to deal with a specific defect. He does what I do, or did what I do, and so I was able to would call him and just say, hey, I've got this situation. Here's what I find. I'd send him some photos, tell him what my analysis is, and then he'd proceed sometimes to beat me up and tell me where my thinking was wrong and why. But he never led me astray. It's good to have advisors like that, and that you can trust. People do it to do their back pocket. So let's jump to, personality differences. I'm different than every one of you in this room. In fact, every one of you is different than everyone in this room. And yet we could probably all get along. We may not be traveling companions. We may not socialize. We may not go to the bar together. I mean, my framer used to always invite me to go to the bar and have a drink after work. I never took him up on it, but he didn't care. We were still, friendly, and he was a great framer, and I took good care of him. I just didn't drink, so I didn't want to go to the bar. And he understood that. So there's different personalities, and those different personalities will negotiate differently. And just recognize that when you're in a negotiation. Don't expect, Bob, when you and I are negotiating a deal, that I see it your way. Because the minute you believe I see it your way, you're wrong. Because I've had different experiences first and foremost. And second, what I want out of the deal is going to be different than what you want out of the deal. So recognize that going in. Respect it. You don't have to like it. Just respect it. And then negotiate accordingly. There's a term that's used in the Harvard negotiating, and again, I'm just going to flip through some of this, but there's some really interesting principles, and I just want to talk on those. One, you got to separate the people from the problem. Whatever you're trying to fix or whatever you're trying to deal with, that personality I talked about, separate it. Because if you don't, you're going to go down the wrong road and make a bad decision or negotiate something that you wouldn't have normally. So separate the people from the problem if you're negotiating out a problem. Focus on the interest, the common interest that you have. Focus on the issues. Don't focus on the personality. You guys are looking at me. You made a judgment about me within the first minute you were in this room. Didn't you? We all do. And that's okay. But don't focus on that. Focus on the things that we have in common. And those are what we're trying to do. And then look at options. Talk about options. Some of my best deals, like the lumber I told you about, I wasn't threatening to leave them. And yet my best deal was that he gave me all these cool options about how to save money that he didn't have to share with me. He was giving away 3%. But they were willing as a company to do that to their best clients. Not their biggest clients, their best clients. You want to be the best clients. of your trades and of your suppliers. You want them to trust you. You want them to like you. And you want to take care of them. How did I take care of them? Any material I sent back, they knew they could resell tomorrow morning. They knew I would make sure of that. And they knew that they got their money on. They could count on that every month they were going to get that check. I never had a credit limit with them. Whether I bought material for 1 house or 30 houses, they didn't care because they knew they were going to get a check at the end of the month. And they knew they were going to get it 5 days earlier than I needed to, and I didn't string them out for another 30, 45 days. And I know a lot of builders that will string it out because of cash flow. Cash flow is king. Remember that. If you haven't learned that lesson, cash flow is king. My dad, one of his business principles that he taught me early on was, you can be the best at whatever you do. But if you can't manage cash flow, you're going to struggle. And when you struggle, you're going to make some decisions that aren't really good, and they're going to hurt you. And so make sure you understand cash flow. When I work with small businesses, I say, get a line of credit. It can be $5,000, whatever it happens to be, but have a line of credit that if you've got a check that you're waiting for, Mike, you're going to give me that check tomorrow, but I need to pay Logan today, have a go-to. Pay Logan, get the money, replenish the line of credit. Doesn't have to be big. I don't know a single large business that doesn't operate with a line of credit. But again, it's a tool. You have to pay it back immediately. But it allows you to do things that you don't normally, because cash flow is king, and you need cash flow in this business. This is the most heavily cash business out there, I think. I can't think of anything that costs more than what we do for a living. And we have loans, and we have credit lines, and we do a lot of different things, but at the end of the day, cash flow is what it's all about. Establish a criteria for success. Before you go into a negotiation, what does it look like for you if it's successful? If you go to start a negotiation and you don't know what it looks like for you to be successful, you have missed the boat entirely. And you will come out with something that probably, and we talked about do-overs. We all want to do do-overs. So BATNA. Ever heard the term BATNA? How many like baseball? It's America. We all like baseball, right? Favorite team? Tigers. Dodgers. Oh, I like you. I'm a Giant and a Dodger fan. That's kind of, I know, but it's just the way it is. New York. Really? Are you just saying that?
Just say that.
Okay, you're just saying that. We'll get that straight. So BATNA has nothing to do with baseball. It has nothing to do with bats. But BATNA is a term that came out of the Harvard School of Business, and specifically when they teach you and train you on negotiations. It was developed in about 1991. There was a book that was called Getting to Yes. If you like negotiations, if you want to be a better negotiator, buy that book, Getting to Yes. It's published in 1981. There was two authors, Roger Fisher and William, I think it's Urey. I might be pronouncing that wrong, but 1981. It's a great go-to book. It's as every bit applicable today as it was the day they wrote it. But BATNA is the best alternative to a negotiated agreement. Now that's a mouthful. Best, can you think of that? Best alternative. So when you're thinking alternative, wait a minute. I need to get this in my negotiation. You need to know what you need to get. I don't know how many people that go into negotiations have no clue what the outcome should be. They just want to negotiate a deal. You need to know what you need to get. And then you need to know what alternatives, you need a BATNA. You need to know what those could be. Russell, you and I are going to have a negotiation. I need to know what you need in your business. What's your personality like? What kinds of things are you going to want me to compromise on? What works for both of us? What are some of the solutions to that? What are some of the compromises that I could agree to that would give you what you want? Because I need you to do, what's your specialty?
Windows, doors, carpentry.
Okay, I'm going to build 300 homes next year, and I need you to do all my windows. But I need them at this price point. So I need to know what he needs, though. I need to know what he's paying. Is he a direct wholesaler, or is he buying them through a distributor? Because that will tell me what your price point is, or I should know that. Because if you're not the distributor, you're paying somebody else, and now I'm paying more. get my point? You need to know that information. And so if you don't know that information, you're going to have some issues. I love this one. Dwight Eisenhower. Plans are worthless, but planning is everything. Boy, those are true words. Because if you're not planning, you're planning to fail. But don't be so rock solid on that plan that you can't compromise, you can't wiggle a little bit. Because in this business, there's a lot of wiggling that takes place. So you've got to plan, you've got to be prepared, but understand that plans were meant to change. We build houses and structures, for goodness sakes. They change. It happens. Prep doc. I have a document up here, and we'll get some more copies. This is just some handouts on the classes today. You're welcome to take them. You're welcome to take a card. This one is a prep doc for negotiation. It basically is a simple outline that tells you everything you need to do to prepare to negotiate successfully. You're welcome to take one. If you want an actual PDF copy or a doc, in fact, I'll do it in doc. If you want that copy to where you can use it in your negotiations, change the header and just use it, send me an email and I'll send it to you for free. I've found it to be very successful. It's very simple. It's one page. But if you go through before negotiation, regardless of what it's for, it could be a new car. How many of you bought a new vehicle in the last 2 years? Was it a great experience? Okay. Did you know what you should be paying for the vehicle? What'd you buy?
Dodge Ram.
Dodge Ram. What'd you buy? Chevy. Okay. Chevy guy?
Yep.
Ram guy? Okay.
Now.
Well, you're honest. So I have a builder client that has bought Rams for the last 3 years for he and all of his guys. And I said to him, you're a Ford guy. What are you doing with a Ram? He goes, they're less money. They're making really good deals right now. And their trucks are really pretty good. I said, sounds good to me. He said, I went to Ford and they didn't want to negotiate. I said, well, okay. But he understood the concept of the prep doc. Know ahead of time as much information as you can gather. I bought a new vehicle last year too. And I knew what they were going for in the Western United States. I knew that they had limited supply. I knew that colors were going to be an issue. And I may not get my first choice, so I had 3 choices. And I decided what the minimal options were that I would take and what the color choices were, 1 to 3. And then I worked with a sales rep that I knew and had done business with for years. And I said, okay, here's my terms. This is what I'm doing. I've got the money ready to go. Let's make a deal. And he went on the computer and he said, I've got this one, and this one. Each one in one of the colors that I had. And choice number 3, he had on the lot. Choice number 1 didn't have a couple of the options I wanted. Choice number 2, color choice number 2, was exactly what I was looking for. And I said, done. Let's do the deal. He said, I can't have it for 30 days. I said, no worries. That's fine. But the prep doc will help, so I'm willing to share that with you. And use it. It makes a big, big difference. Because Yogi Berra said that if you don't know where you're going, you just might end up somewhere else. And in negotiations, if you don't know where you're going, I guarantee you, you'll end up somewhere else. Back to that story I told you about the person I worked for and the bonus. If I hadn't had a plan, if I hadn't really talked that through with my advisor, if I hadn't mentally thought through what he was going to do or what I thought he was going to do and what his motivations were, I would have got screwed, bottom line. I still wouldn't be working for him, but I would have got screwed. I got partially screwed. But the reality is I could live with that because it was still a lot of money. And I knew I deserved it. So Yogi's right. Know where you want to end up. If you want to be a builder your whole life, then be the best builder you can be. If you don't want to be the best builder or the best, plumber and HVAC guy, then what are you doing in the business? Figure out something else to do. There's a lot of other jobs out there. If we were to do an aptitude test, have any of you done an aptitude test as to what you would be really good at? Okay, sometimes they do it in high school now, but college, we used to do them in college. And, you know, there's a lot of different companies will do them to decide what hole they're going to put you or what seat on the bus they're going to put you. The reality is, what I have found in my career is that most builders and people in the building industry can do a lot of different things. You could have picked 10 or 12 professions and been very successful at it. But you chose to be in construction because you are a little creative. You like the satisfaction of getting something done and seeing it. Any of you stare at the house you just finished or the project you just finished and say, wow, that's cool? You ever drive back and show somebody that project? Be it honest, yeah, we've all done it. But we chose to do that. But we have the ability to do almost anything we want to do. So my challenge to you, or my invitation to you, is be the best you can be. Don't be mediocre. Be the best you can be. And at the end of the day, you'll really enjoy it. Or continue to enjoy it. Okay, let's do this one. We always think that negotiation is, and I'll end on this one. Negotiation is all about money, right? It's all about the price. The Ram's cheaper. Well, is it cheaper? That's the first question we should be asking. Will the insurance cost more? Will the maintenance be more? And I'm not saying it is on the Dodge. He loves his Dodges, and I believe him, and they're really nice. But I'm a Ford guy. But you have to ask those questions. So the first thing you have to do is, I've got an acronym for price, and I'm just going to throw them all up on the board, and we'll talk about them together rather than individually. So price stands for preparation, relationships, integrity, communications, and the economic reality of what's going on at that moment in time. So when you negotiate, if you're not looking at those 5 things, you're not going to have the best outcome because your baton is wrong. You really want to know, so you have to prepare. That's the prep doc that I talked about. Relationships. Can you negotiate a really favorable relationship better, John, if you have a good relationship with whoever it is you're doing that, as opposed to someone cold turkey? Always. Always. A friend taught me, do business with people you know and trust, even if they're a little bit more money. Because they will deliver. Because you know them and trust them, and they know you and trust you. And you'll pay a little bit more, but at the end you really won't. And that has served me well over the years. Integrity. Man, life is short. Don't work for anyone that doesn't have integrity, because you don't want to get caught up in that wheel with them at all. Communication. Key in this industry. Biggest problem we have, lack of communication. And so communicate, talk. I've been in negotiations where we said, hey, let's come back to this in a week, or let's come back to this tomorrow. It's okay. Don't feel so pressured that you have to make the decision today. Don't be afraid. My dad always said, when you go to buy a car, be willing to walk away. Because if you're not willing to walk away, you're emotionally attached. If you're emotionally attached, you're going to pay more. It's just the way it is. So communication is critical. And then the economic reality. Do we have to pay more for lumber today than we did 5 years ago? Yeah, we do. Is it fair? No.
Well, it's commodity, so.
How about gas? Fuel. Are we paying more than we probably should be paying? Yeah. But that's the economic reality. So if you're making 10 trips to a job, when if you were really doing your job right, you could only make 5 trips to the job, those extra 5 trips are costing you a lot of money because you're paying for gas and time and not working on another project. So those things all come into play of being more productive, more profitable, because you have to recognize, and as you're negotiating, there's nothing worse than not recognizing the realities of the world. So I'm negotiating for cabinetry. I don't know, do we have a cabinet guy here? What's the lead time on a whole custom house cabinetry? What's the lead time?
I'm installing in February, late February right now.
Late February. Yeah. So if I ordered today, new door size, or new door styles and colors, and we had the plans, and you could measure.
Everything and paid your deposit day and installed the end of February.
End of February.
Wow.
Yeah, but I told my buyer they could be in by New Year's Day.
Life sucks.
I think you get my point. You know what? Economic reality is different. I was teaching a group of attorneys, and I'll end on this note, because you need to hear this. And we were talking about defects, and we were talking about what's happening in the world of defect litigation. And one of the attorneys, I opened it up for question and answer, which I always do, and that's a bit of a loaded gun, and that's okay. And one of the young litigating attorneys says, have you run into the situation where Mr. Builder is always using the excuse that he can't get the materials on time, therefore there are delays, but his contract calls for penalties for delays? And I said, yeah. He said, how long is that argument going to hold up in court today? Because it held up before really well. But today, how's that going to hold up? And then 12 of us, I'm the only sole non-attorney present, began to discuss that phenomena that if we're ordering materials with the same lead time as we were 2 years ago or 5 years ago, we're screwed if there's penalties. Our reputation is screwed at the very least because we're not going to finish jobs on time. The reality is, from a legal standpoint, you have to change how you do business. Because if I needed cabinets by December, mid-December, and you can't get to me till end of February, I should have known that because I should have had that conversation with you when I started the job, and you would have said, Mark, I need this ordered by this date to meet that closing date.
You know, it's interesting because my designers and stuff, we've had to revamp the discussions we have with homeowners and contractors from the very beginning. When we go look at a project or I get blueprints from the beginning,
Right?
they all ask me, what are we looking at time?
Yep.
And the problem is it all varies because it all depends on when that decision is made.
Yep.
I can tell you the end of February today, but if you don't make your decisions for another 2 weeks.
Yeah, you told me that was if I made the decisions today and paid my deposit.
Yes, you will.
Yeah, okay.
It's become a very interesting change of dealing with it. Because you go back 3 years, 2 years even, you know, we're 8 weeks, 4 to 8 weeks.
Yeah.
if
And you're a really good client, so I'll squeeze you in.
If you're a good buddy, it'll be in 4 weeks.
I'll squeeze you in 3.5 maybe.
Yes,
Supply chain is different right now.
it is.
And I don't even want to get into that, but it's different. We need to accept that. And in our negotiations and in our planning, we need to accept that it is different. So some of us older guys need to understand we need to change our ways. Some of you younger guys may teach us that, hey, it's a new world out there. Let's just go with it. We need to adapt. Let's take another.